right now. So we're going to have the link
Sure.
later. So thanks a lot for being here.
Of course, thank you for having me, Henry. Actually, can you see the right screen? Can you see the share
Yes.
screen? Yeah, perfect. All right. So yes, I am down at Fort Lauderdale, but of course, these Miami-Dade ordinance created a lot of noise because it is the first one to be that strict in South Florida, and it's actually one of the strictest of the whole state. Not as much as for the period, but more for the type of fertilizer that you can actually use. Well, these slides Harry already showed you. The problem we have in South Florida is mostly our soil, which is sandy in nature, and basically does not retain water, does not retain nutrients, and so everything goes to the water table. Now, we have quite a lot of scientific evidence that shows that turfgrass doesn't really leach that much once it's established and kicking. But you know, it's actually quite an easy target. So basically, it's a really easy target. It's a really easy to point fingers at turfgrass and say, hey, you are the one causing the problem. While it's not really that. Regardless, that does not mean that we can go out and fertilize and keep throwing nitrogen at our grass. We need to follow some simple basic rules and make sure that this doesn't happen. And yes, of course, this is not good for tourism. This is not good for the fishing industry. This is not good for anybody. And the dead fish that was Biscayne Bay 2020 actually usually starts with these, which is algal bloom. Algae loves sun, heat, and nitrogen. Those are the three things that algae loves the most. And so heat and sun, we have plenty in South Florida. If we also add too much nitrogen to the pot, then we have these algal bloom, that algae bloom that are actually toxic for fish and environment. So as Harry said, we're going to talk about best management practices for landscape industry here for turfgrass fertilization. It's quite easy. Fertilizer here always has three numbers. First one, always nitrogen. Second one, always phosphorus. Third one, always potassium. Now, I cannot tell you the first number has a wide range that goes from 0 to 46 usually. And the first number is not regulated by the ordinance. It's actually the amount of slow release nitrogen that it's regulated by the ordinance. And we'll talk about it in a second. But the second number needs to be 0, okay? Needs to be 0 all year round in Miami-Dade. Third number is potassium. Good thing about potassium is that it's not toxic. Actually, if you eat a banana, it's mostly potassium. And it's not toxic to human, it's not toxic to the fish, and so the third number can be whatever it is. So second number needs to be 0, first number does not really matter, but the slow release nitrogen needs to be at least 65%, and I'll tell you how to calculate that. So nitrogen is essential for turfgrass growth. Nitrogen is actually, our industry is based on one thing only, which is aesthetics, okay? We do not eat turf yet, and therefore all we need from our turf is for our turf to be nice and beautiful and green. And unfortunately, nitrogen is the one thing that we need for turf constantly. Now, usually turfgrass needs a lot of nitrogen, mostly when it's actively growing, which is in this region, it's between May and October, and is when you cannot apply nitrogen. That is why we actually are, we think that although these ordinances are created with the best intent, they may not have the best outcome. If you prohibit people to not to fertilize for 5 months, then what happens? Everybody goes out on November 1st and fertilizes. And when you overload the whole environment with that amount of nitrogen, we don't really know what's going to happen. Regardless, I'm not here to I don't make the rules, but I'm not also here to tell you do not follow rules. Of course, the rules are there. You need to follow them, especially because you can get a ticket if they find you fertilizing with nitrogen or phosphorus within May 15 and October 30th. And so do not apply fertilizer containing nitrogen or phosphorus between May 15 and October 30th. It's that's the problem. It's highly mobile in sandy soil, and overloading nitrogen can actually lead to too much algal bloom and kills fish. Now, you can apply 4 pounds of nitrogen per 1,000 square feet per year, and you have a window that goes from November 1st until May 15, okay? And you can apply 1 pound of nitrogen per 1,000 square feet per application, up to 1 pound of nitrogen per 1,000 square feet per application. When are the best dates to apply nitrogen at this point? Well, my recommendation are, of course, November, because turfgrass down here is still growing, so you can actually apply some nitrogen in November, possibly early November, okay? At that point, you can apply 1 more, maybe mid-December, okay? But before Christmas, for sure, before Christmas, do not apply nitrogen January, February at all. But the best would be November, and then wait for the next spring, okay? Wait when the temperatures start rising, so probably first half of March, okay, between March 1 and 15, mid-April, and then right before the blackout period, which means go out this weekend and apply before Monday, which is when the blackout period kicks in, okay? If you apply nitrogen now, that's the best thing you can do, working around the blackout period. Because bottom line, turfgrass, St. Augustine grass is starting growing a lot now, which means it needs a lot of nitrogen to grow. So rule of thumb, more or less, November, early March, April, and right before the blackout period. Those are the 4, more or less, the 4 application events, fertilizer applications that you can do. Nitrogen can be found quick or soluble. You can now use it. So urea, simple urea, it's cheap, but you can now use it. Okay, so forget about it. Forget about urea. Organic or inorganic, ammonium nitrate, ammonium sulfate, ammonium phosphate, can now use it. Ordinance does not let you use it. You need to go towards these types, and mostly the one that usually you can find out in the stores that are at 65% slow release nitrogen or higher are sulfur coated urea or polymer sulfur coated urea. What is coated urea or coated fertilizer? Well, think about your M&Ms. You have your chocolate that actually protects your almond, is basically more or less the same thing. You have a coating that protects your nutrient, and this coating gets dissolved due to microbial action, and microbial action depends on temperature and sun. Hydrolysis, which means water, okay? So you need to actually release a huge amount of water to have this nitrogen going into the environment, temperature and osmotic diffusion. If you fertilize and just leave it sitting on the turf, nothing is going to happen, okay? So this coating helps the fertilizer, helps the nitrogen being released slowly into the environment, and so the turf can pick it up in time. It's not you apply, the nitrogen is available only for 1 or 2 days, and then that's it. No, the plant can actually use it for up to 45 days. Phosphorus. Phosphorus is toxic, and this is one thing that I actually kind of agree with the fertilizer ordinance for turfgrass, because established turf does establish warm season turf. So the type of turfgrass that we actually grow here, establish St. Augustine grass, establish zoysia, establish Bermuda grass, do not need a lot of phosphorus. Okay, usually Florida soils, fortunately, are high in phosphorus content, and so turfgrass will not really need much of phosphorus to grow, unless you have a soil test that tells you, hey, you need phosphorus. But usually this problem is not really a problem for turfgrass down here in South Florida. Potassium. Potassium you can apply all year round. There are fertilizers out there that are actually 0,060, and you can apply that as much as you want. However, potassium is known to be a protectant of stressors. Okay, during the summer month, we do not really have stressors down here in South Florida, meaning that the growth potential of turfgrass in South Florida is really high. Okay, potassium is usually used to protect against cold injury. Not that we really have much in Miami for turfgrass, or it's used against drought. Okay, and the blackout period is during the rainy season. So is it good to apply potassium? Yes. How much potassium do you need? I believe that a ratio of 2:1 is actually sufficient in Florida. Nitrogen potassium ratio of 2:1 is actually sufficient in Florida. You don't really need to go 1:1. Can you apply during the blackout period? Yes. Is it going to solve all your problems because you cannot apply nitrogen during the blackout period? No. Do not expect miracles. Okay, that's what I'm saying. If you cannot apply nitrogen for 4 months and a half, your turfgrass is definitely going to thin, and it's definitely going to lose quality during those months. Other thing, magnesium. Turfgrass doesn't really need magnesium. Ponds need way more magnesium. So that's not restricted either, but a lot of sulfur-coated or polymer-coated urea actually have some percentage of magnesium in them. Use them for your ponds and trees more than your turfgrass. Usually when you apply fertilizer through outside the blackout period through polymer-coated urea, majority of those fertilizer actually have enough magnesium for turfgrass. Be more worried about palms needing magnesium. And then, and then iron. Okay, so iron is available to plants only when pH is acidic, and we do not have that here in South Florida. Okay, so iron will always be a problem for turfgrass, for turfgrass species, and you definitely want to apply some iron that you can apply during the blackout period. And what I strongly suggest you is to apply liquid iron, so some form of iron that's readily available for plants. Okay, that you can apply during the blackout period. It's going to green it up your turf. It's not going to make it grow faster, but it's going to green it up. It's going to have a much higher, darker green color, but it's not going to be a substitute for nitrogen. Unfortunately, that's not a substitute for nitrogen for turfgrass. So 1 pound of nitrogen, 1 pound of nitrogen per 1,000 square feet. How do we calculate that? Well, first of all, you need to know the area you're fertilizing. Try to be conservative, okay? Usually the areas you're fertilizing, they're not a perfect square, but try to calculate it as it was a perfect square and try to be conservative. In this case, for instance, just estimate 30 feet by 20 feet. Do not measure from the sidewalk up to the first plant, because as Henry said, you don't want to leave any residual nitrogen or any residual fertilizer on cement. Cement does not need fertilizer nor water to grow. In this case, yeah, as you see, 30 by 20, we have 600 square feet. And then you determine the nitrogen source as I told you. Only these the sulfur coated urea are actually usable, and you cannot apply them at more than 1 pint of nitrogen per 1,000 square feet. How do you know if a fertilizer is 65% or more slow release nitrogen? The label tells you. Every bag of fertilizer in the state of Florida is required by law to have a comprehensive label, okay? And that's really good. So this is just an example, okay? But every single fertilizer bag is going to have the same thing. This fertilizer has 30-0-10, okay? What does that mean? 30% nitrogen, 0% phosphorus, 10% potassium. So N to K ratio 3:1, phosphorus is 0. So at first looks like it's a good fertilizer, but we don't know yet if we are allowed to use it because we don't know the percent of slow release nitrogen. So what do? We go check the label. The label must tell you in the state of Florida total nitrogen, which is 30%, and that's we have it from that number. But then you scroll down and it also tells you the percentage of slow release nitrogen. How do we know if a source has 65% or more of slow release nitrogen? Is quite easy. You take the slow release nitrogen content and you divide it into the total content. So in this case, 27 divided by 30 is 0.9. You multiply by 100, 90% of the nitrogen in the bag is considered slow release nitrogen. Okay, so that's higher than 65%, and that's totally fine. Now, if this number, for instance, goes down to 15, then we would have 15 divided by 30, it would be 0.5, multiplied by 100 is 50%, and that would not, you will not be allowed to use this fertilizer. Okay, that's how you could calculate slow release nitrogen. Now, the Florida, the trick question that Henry gave you at the beginning was Florida has a different ordinance, a different model ordinance compared to Miami-Dade. Florida allows you to fertilize with 30% slow release nitrogen, but Miami-Dade tells you no, and you need to follow Miami-Dade because cities and counties have the capability in this state to have to enforce stricter ordinance. So the model ordinance is you need to have at least 30% slow release nitrogen, but that does not matter. This county by Miami-Dade County, you need to have 65% slow release controlled nitrogen, okay? So once we have our area, once we have our source of nitrogen, how do we establish what's 1 pound of nitrogen per 1,000 square feet? That's really, really simple. All you have to do is divide 100, divide into the percentage nitrogen that's in the bag, okay? So this is just an example. This is another fertilizer, and let's say it's 15-0-15. Is 1-to-1 ratio and no phosphorus. For the sake of this example, we decided that this bag is already over 65% slow release nitrogen. All we have to do is take 100 divided by 15, and these 6.5, these will be the amount of pounds of fertilizer that give you 1 pound of nitrogen per 1,000 square feet. Meaning, you will have to use 6.5 pounds of fertilizer per 1,000 square feet to get to 1 pound of nitrogen per 1,000 square feet. Okay, that's as easy as that. Take 100 divided by the first number. What does that tell me for this example? 15-0-15, 6.6, 6.5. That tells me that out of these 6.5 more or less pound of fertilizer, 1 pound is nitrogen and the rest is our other stuff. What are other stuff? Well, the coating, the phosphorus, we've seen the phosphorus, there is going to be also 1 pound of phosphorus. And then there are going to be a bunch of micronutrients that are not regulated. Magnesium, for instance, iron, for instance, etc., etc., etc. But what you need to know is that once you take 100 divided by the amount of nitrogen that's in the bag, that tells you the amount of fertilizer that you will have to apply per 1,000 square feet. If you don't want to do calculation all the time, take a picture of this table. These shows you fairly typical percentage of nitrogen contained in the bag, and pretty much how much square footage you have to treat. Do not look at that because this is the well, yeah, actually, yes, I changed that. So let's say this is 65%. No, slow release nitrogen. Sorry, this should be the other way around. This is for the Florida ordinance, but it don't really matter. But yes, for instance, we have 16% nitrogen in the bag. How much fertilizer do we need to give per 1,000 square feet? 6.25. Why is that? We take 100, we divide by 16, and that gives you 6.25. If we have to treat, instead of 1,000 square feet, if we have to treat 1,500 square feet, then this table actually gives you the amount of nitrogen, of fertilizer that gets you to 1 pound of nitrogen per 1,000 square feet. Okay, all these values are the amount of fertilizer that you need to apply to get to 1 pound of nitrogen per 1,000 square feet. As Henry said, use shield, try to calibrate as much as possible, and when you apply fertilizer, always apply fertilizer in both directions. Okay, do passes north, south, and east, west. For instance, in the example that we've seen before, we had to apply 6.6 pounds of fertilizer per 1,000 square feet, apply half of it going east-west and half of it going north-south, so the other direction. 4 pounds per 1,000 square feet of nitrogen per year. It's what we would consider moderate amount of nitrogen for South Florida. The high would be 4 to 6 pounds of nitrogen per 1,000 square feet. 4 is sufficient. 4 pounds of nitrogen per 1,000 square feet is usually sufficient, although it's sufficient if you can fertilize during the summer. We don't really know what happens when you apply 4 pounds of nitrogen per 1,000 square feet outside the summer. We have studies going on right now. What we have for sure are new cultivars. For instance, Citra Blue, which is the new UF cultivar that came out in the market a couple of years ago. Darker color to begin with, so you actually don't need to apply as much nitrogen as good old Floratam that always look lighter green. So stay tuned, check for new cultivars, see if you can find new cultivars that are usually darker green that will need less nitrogen for their growth. As Henry said, know your ordinance, use the website, use the app, because every ordinance has so every city and every county have their own ordinance. And so just in summer, the best way to avoid leaching is usually have dense turfgrass. Turfgrass is, I'm not gonna lie, turfgrass is a starving crop. Okay, and so it actually really metabolizes that amount, that nitrogen that you give. But you need to apply only the correct amount. More is not better, and you're not even allowed to. Maintain a buffer zone. What is it, Henry? 20 feet? Is it 20 feet? You are muted.
20 feet, yeah.
Yeah. Maintain 20 feet around water bodies. Test your soil if you think you have nitrogen deficiency, if you think you have phosphorus deficiency. For turfgrass, I don't think that's the case. For palms and trees, ornamentals, probably yes. Use fertilizer with no phosphorus in Miami-Dade. Okay, second number, always 0. Fertilize turf when it's actively growing, meaning if you have to fertilize outside the blackout period, do not fertilize in January and February. That fertilization is going to waste. Okay. Irrigate fertilizer. When you fertilize, since you have to apply a fertilizer that's at least 65% low release nitrogen, irrigate with at least a quarter of an inch of water that night. Okay. Do not fertilize newly established sod because it comes with fertilizer from the sod farm. So when you actually sod, wait at least 30 days before the first fertilization, even better if 60. And always, if you have a spill, clean up fertilizer of driveways, sidewalks, and patios. Do these, follow your ordinance, you're not going to get a ticket from the fertilizer police. And with that, thank you very much. And I guess we can answer questions. And actually, before we answer questions, should we go with the post test, Henry, and then we answer questions?
Sure.
Yeah, let's go with the post test. Now, we're going to ask you to answer exactly, excuse me, one sec, exactly the same questions that you answer at the beginning. Please answer. That is going to tell us if we are doing a good job or not. Yeah, please.
Can you...
Yeah, I see people are starting, so please go ahead and answer. Thanks. Yeah, thank you, guys. Keep going. It's exactly the same questions as the beginning. Let's give them what, 30 more seconds, 1 more minute. 30 seconds, Henry.
Yep.
Yeah. That's good. Thank you for answering, guys. All right. I think we're good. All right. Do you want to hand it?
Yeah.
All right.
Right. We want to hopefully everybody get it right this time. So what is the percentage of slow release nitrogen ISRN you allow? Yep, you're right, 65%. This is very high. How many pounds of nitrogen per 1,000 square feet I allow per application? Yep, one pound. And how many pounds per year you can apply? We're talking about 4 pounds. That's right. Yeah. So as Marcos,
yeah,
yep.
Question for us. Does the chat? Okay. Any questions for us? Yes.
Grazie mille per il tuo discorso.
Prego. Prego, non sai che.
So that's very interesting, Marco. You mentioned that apply nitrogen in November, March, April, and May.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah, because the truth is we want to fertilize when the grass is growing. That's the thing. And think about it. Think about it. How many times do you mow your St. Augustine grass in the summer compared to the winter time? Right. The fact that turf does not go dormant here in South Florida does not mean that that turf is actually growing fast. It's actually quiescent. That's the term, scientific term, which means it's still green, but it's not really growing. And so at that point, applying fertilizer around January and February, when we have, even this January and February, we have some nights that we went down to the 40s, right? Higher 40s, but still 40s. Under those conditions, the grass is not growing at all. And the grass that's not growing does not really need nitrogen. And so you definitely need to, with this ordinance, you need to start thinking, when can you actually apply nitrogen? I would have preferred possibly an ordinance that was 1 month shorter or 15 days shorter. Maybe from June 1st to October 15 would have been much better, because you could apply October 15 and end of November. But if you apply at the beginning of November, then at that point, and you think about 45 days period, then at that point you're around Christmas, and around Christmas the grass is not really growing, and it's not gonna start growing until March. So when it wakes up, when temperature comes up, and the grass starts waking up and actually started growing, which is March usually, then it's when you actually want to have your first fertilization of the year. And definitely this weekend, go out and fertilize now that you can, before Monday.
Any other question, guys?
Yeah, any other question?
We still have some time here.
Yeah, unmute yourself and ask the question. They can unmute themselves, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So if you want to ask a question, you first need to unmute yourself. So on the bottom of the image, you are going to see mute, or you're going to see the microphone that says mute. Click on it if you're mute.
Yeah. Or you can use the chat if you want.
Or you can type in your question.
Well, I guess everything is clear.
All right.
Let me also post launch a survey, guys. So if you can have it like 2 minutes to answer this question, would be great.
And just to let you know, I will email you possibly a couple of months from now. Just making sure that you guys are doing the right thing. With the bill going through, legislation, what will with the bill going through, the legislation, what will it do to current bans? Raise them next year. That's the bill. The bill, the idea of the bill is actually to lift all the bans and just keep the Florida, the state ordinance, starting next year. But the bill is not through yet. Okay. So this year you still have the Miami-Dade ordinance in place.
Okay, I don't hear anything about that, Marco. So this is coming from the state?
Yeah, it's coming from Senate. Yep.
Gotcha. All right, guys, stay tuned, because this is developing, news here. All right, so give it 10 more seconds.
Yeah, Henry and I will, if something changes, Henry and I will do different seminars.
Right.
But yeah, check your email. I will send you a post survey that's gonna take 2 to 3 minutes to fill up, probably. August or something like that. Yeah, 3 months from now.
Great. All right, guys, happy Mother's Day for everybody. Enjoy the weekend. Remember to be conscious about the environment. We want to enjoy beaches and water, and happy weekend, and enjoy your life. Bye-bye, guys.
Bye, Henry. Thank you. Bye. Ciao.
Bye. Bye. Chill.
Thank you. Bye.